Hey guys and gals, Boardnail back with you, and I'm going to continue on with Ozark in the run up to the final episodes, which will land on Netflix at the end of this month. So I will be covering those episodes when they hit, So this is my review of Ozark Season 3, Episode 4, and it is called Boss Fight. Full spoilers once again from the start of this video, and this obviously follows on from the dramatic cliffhanger at the end of the last one, Marty being kidnapped by the cartel, taken to Mexico to face Navarro. Of course, part of that is because of him monitoring Wendy, so they want to know why. In this episode, he's questioned and sort of put in a cell, sort of tortured a bit, but he does actually say it's because he's a little afraid of Wendy. He doesn't quite trust her all the way. But what we get in this episode is that so much of it is about Marty in this cell and the back and forth, because there's various times where he goes and he's questioned, and then because he doesn't really give them the answers then they want, they sort of then take him back. And this is sort of anchored with some important flashback stuff. So Marty, whenever he's back in the cell, starts having memories about when he lost his dad years ago. His dad died in hospital and Marty was there, and it's obviously always been a sore sort of spot for him and something he remembers a lot. And it's important to show those flashbacks and him at a low point in his life, because his arc in this episode is actually then he stands up for himself. He stands up for himself against the cartel. He's actually very honest, and it sort of leads to him getting himself out of a sticky situation, because the cartel also admit at one point then they're doing it to see if Wendy and Ruth can launder money without him, if the business will fall down or not. So that's another reason for him being kept there. But it's one of those things where it is sort of this arc where in a way he does become, to use a stereotypical term, more of a man as the episode goes on and the conclusion. So it's a really effective episode for Marty, and the reason you cast Jason Bateman in this role is because he is this classic sort of underdog type, quite Weasley looking guy who's very sort of modest at times, very reserved, and this role for him calls a lot of time for him to be put under pressure, to be demeaned and what have you. But also because it's Jason Bateman, you sort of get the sense then he can sliver his way out of things. He's very quick to think on his feet. He's a sharp talker, so it really hits home why he was perfect casting for Marty. But a lot of tension in this episode, really, with him, locked away and the various back and forths, and because it gets to the point where eventually, because Navarro starts talking about Wendy and how he sort of loves her. I don't know if he uses that word, but he admires her because she just speaks the truth, and well, not just that, but she wants it all. That's her ambition, and he's definitely right in that. So that's something where he has respect for Wendy because of that, because he sort of wants his it all as well, or in his mind probably has it all. So it gets to this boiling point where Marty ends up helping them out, because back in the Ozarks, one of the system goes down where they're supposed to be laundering money, and Ruth doesn't know what to do, so that they sort of call Marty, and he has to sort it out over the phone, which he does because he knows his stuff, and he sort of fixes the problem. So that impresses Navarro, but it's not quite enough on its own to get Marty released back to Ozark. He sort of, Navarro wants him to be honest and asks, well, what do you want? He keeps repeating that phrase, and Marty ends up by saying that he wants freedom to launder money in his own way, to in places that are like safe type things, not because he's obviously been against this whole expansion idea. And he also says, which is a sort of a moment of like an ego boost for him. He says to Navarro, "I want respect and acknowledgement for my expertise." So that's a really great line, sort of thing. So obviously he's eventually released at the end of the episode, but it's some good scenes with him. There's obviously back home, there's a lot of scrambling around with Wendy and the kids, and they're all very worried, and it's actually Ben who tells Charlotte and Jonah the truth, because Wendy is doing her thing of, like, I guess in her mind protecting them, but not telling them the full truth, not letting them in, because she tells Ben what's going on. She like opens up and admits then what they're doing and what's happened to Marty. So it's actually Ben who later tells Charlotte and Jonah. And I mean, speaking of Ben, he's gets further into like the business here, because Ruth, you know, running the casino, like starts like a team, and you know, to run it with Marty away in his absence, because at this point they don't really know what's going to happen, if he'll be coming back anytime soon or not. So, and Ben's on that team, so him and Ruth by the end of this episode are starting to get closer. They even share a beer. So I think at first Ruth found him quite obnoxious, but she is slowly warming to him. And I will say the actor playing Ben, I think, is another great bit of casting. I think he's really good. I think there's a lot of charisma there, and he also has this sense of this really rough around the edges sort of character who it's sort of a bit unsure if he's really that charming, if you can really trust. I mean, there's a charm to him, but there's this sense of there's something behind that which maybe you can't quite trust. So it could sort of go either way. I mean, we've seen there's a temple with him in like a previous episode, but him and Ruth do start getting on by the end of this episode, and they share a beer, so there seems like there could be something starting up between them two. Also in this one, Charlotte accidentally lets slip to Helen they know about the whole business, the money laundering, and Helen in her own way, because first of all she actually tricked Charlotte into letting that slip. She sort of saw that Charlotte was like holding something back and like tricked her into saying it, but then Helen warns her, you know, don't tell my daughter, don't get my daughter Erin involved in this. She like gives her a stern warning, and Charlotte's obviously smart enough to say, okay, sure, yeah, and I think she's smart enough to maybe follow through on that and actually not do that, try and keep it. But her and Jonah are like starting to hang around more with Erin, spend more time with her over this summer break, so you probably get the impression that something's going to come out at some point, but it's going to lead to quite an interesting dynamic with them. Well, Charlotte at least trying to not tell her the truth, so that's something else to keep a track of. But this season bubbling along very nicely. So that's my thoughts on season 3, episode 4 of Ozark, the boss fight. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. You can also support me, patreon.com/boardnow. And I will just say before I go that there's a lot of exciting TV reviews coming up on the channel. I will be returning to Stranger Things very soon. I'm going to be doing season 3 of that to get ready for the new season in May, which I will be covering. Also, obviously, I'm going to continue on with Ozark, and very exciting indeed because Better Call Saul is back this Monday. That will be dropping Monday on Netflix. So that's the final season, of course. Really excited for that, and I will be covering that on the channel as well. So lots of exciting TV content coming up. But I'll be back with more Ozark soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.